Thanks for tuning in, guys. You're listening to Ace Comicals. I'm Greg Driver. I'm joined by Rahul Jani and Leon Everett. Let's go! Welcome to episode number 58 of Ace Comicals, and today I am joined by both of my co-hosts. I have Leon.
Hey.
And Rahul.
Hey, guys.
So, first things first, I think we should introduce the multi-million, squillion, billion-dollar movie that is in the room, that is Captain Marvel, which all three of us have been to see. I've been twice. I don't know about you guys. Did you guys manage to catch it a second time yet?
No, not yet. But I want to check it out again this week.
Totally worth a second watch.
Yeah, I'd like to see it a second time. I saw it in the first week. Really good seeing it on in the first few days of release, because like with every Marvel film, there's a big buzz and the audience tends to be pretty good early on because everyone's sort of on the same excitement level. But yeah, I'd like to see it a second time too. I haven't had the opportunity yet.
Yeah, the first time I went on a Wednesday night, the Wednesday after release, and it was kind of dead. So that was really good because I was alone. I went on my own, so it was solo cinema trip, and I think there was 12 other people in there. So
okay,
yeah, and they were all respectful people, that older people with jobs and stuff. So that was cool.
Yeah, I was bracing myself for another Greg tale of cinema woe, but I guess not.
No,
that's nice.
No, they were all people that followed the damn cinema rules. What the hell? And then the second time I went to see it, I took Sophie on Saturday, and we thought we were going to be going into a standard showing, but it turned out the time we wanted was Director's Lounge at the Showcase in Leicester.
Right.
So we ended up in a Director's Lounge showing, and we weren't sorry about that because we know that kids don't spring for Director's Lounge tickets. So
It was okay. Big comfy seats, and you got the little table for your drink. Nice.
Yeah. It was nice. Yeah. So both times I had a nice chill cinema experience. So what about Generalissimo Rahul? Did he have to execute anyone?
Well, I saw it weirdly on a MOV that first time, and we were being flanked by crinklers. So there was a guy on. I was in the middle of these two, so luckily I was buffered by my mates. But to Marv's left, there was a guy who was just canoodling with his girlfriend and eating a Scotch egg. And on Leon's right, there was a guy who just kept opening packet after packet of crisps,
at the same time.
Into his bag.
Wait, at the same time, making out and eating a Scotch egg at the same time.
Two different dudes, yeah. But yeah. Was
the Scotch egg pressed between their faces? Both of them simultaneously taking bites out of it, or what?
Honestly, it's a testament to the quality of the film that I wasn't super distracted by those people. And again, Marv was in the way of, the Scotch egg couple and myself. But the film was engaging enough that I wasn't really paying attention to the annoying people around me. So
I can't think of anything less romantic than a Scotch egg in a Marvel movie.
I mean, me neither. I don't know what their deal was, and they left straight away and left behind a wake of popcorn, behind them as they got up.
I want to know what their deal was.
Yeah, I don't know.
But okay, yeah. So, I trust all three of us enjoyed it because I certainly did.
Yeah, had a good time. Standard middle of the road Marvel fare, I think would be my summary.
Yeah. See, I would say that I would go with mid-tier Marvel for this. Definitely, it's mid-tier Marvel, but there's some really cool stuff going on in there. It's a really good setup for Endgame. Good introduction for a character, actually. I quite like that, and it's in fitting with the rest of the MCU in the way that they have made Carol Danvers. Which I'll get into a little bit more in a moment because I'm going to have to give you guys a timestamp and say that we're going to be talking a little bit of spoilers. So from here on out, we are going to be talking more about the movie and possibly dropping some spoilers. So if you don't want to hear that, tune back in at the timestamp that I'm going to leave on the show notes, and that's when we will start talking about comics. So, like, what was your kind of impression of the movie? How did you feel they handled the character of Carol Danvers, kind of thing, Ray?
So, as much as I love like the Ms. Marvel brand, like I've spoken about that a lot in the past, I don't really know that much about the precursor Ms. Marvel or Captain Marvel or Carol Danvers in general. And we did talk about the Carol Danvers comic, which was basically in the run-up to this movie. They had a run of comics, which I didn't actually finish the run, but explaining her history. But aside from that, I didn't really know much about her. So this was, I think, a good introduction to a bunch of new elements to the MCU. So namely, Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel herself, but also the Kree and the Skrulls, which to me always sounded very similar to each other just because they have K's in their name. So I was kind of conflating the two up until this movie. But like from what I gather, I really like what they did with the Skrulls because generally they're meant to be like a cannon fodder sort of acceptable target villain in the comics. And I like that they did a bit of a flipperoo in this movie.
Yeah.
So like overall, I really did like it as an introduction, but I think, and this is something we've all talked about off air, that it's a shame that Captain Marvel and even some of the other more recent Marvel films introduce new characters, but don't give them enough time to like breathe and become themselves before being thrown into, the big Cataclysm Avengers movies and like, for the upcoming what's the new one? Endgame. Yeah.
Because that's what this is. This is Captain Marvel cutting a promo for how she's going to kick Thanos' ass. That's what this is. And you're right in saying that she probably could have done, like, it's like I think we said, did we say before that Black Panther could have done with the second Black Panther movie before being chucked into everything else, into the smoothie, as it were?
It's a general point, because I think that some of these characters have, say, like Iron Man, Cap, and Thor have all had a trilogy of movies and have been in other movies as well as the Avengers movies, whereas like Spider-Man, Black Panther, and Carol, and others like Doctor Strange have only had like one movie before being thrown into this big end of Phase 3 like big crossover battle. So one of my short feelings that's a shortcoming of this model is that you get to see these characters do like a maiden voyage, and then immediately it feels incongruous how like they're dealing with like relatively small potato stuff as they like form and become their own thing, and then they're thrust into this big intergalactic, it's the end of time, it's the end of the universe, big storyline. That makes me think like when they go back to sequel, it's going to be a bit weird. I mean, I don't know. I think it's one of my least favorite aspects of the MCU, which itself is just a side effect of them doing this thing that's never been done before. And what they do is quite remarkable, but it does leave a bit of a sour feeling in my mouth. But overall, I think the movie does a good job of introducing the character, and even doing some heavy lifting that it has to do with introducing the Skrulls. And we saw a bit of the Kree with Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one, but this does a better job, or it does a good job of giving us a bit more insight into the conflict, the war, and the different tensions between them.
The thing with the Kree and the Skrull, it's less black and white in the comics than it is in these movies. And the thing in this, the way they dealt with the Skrull, and I can say it because we're doing a little bit of spoilers. So the Skrull face turn towards the end of this film and everything else, it's like, I mean, I like what they did with the Skrull, but at the same time, I would have liked them to have had a more nuanced approach to that instead of just saying these bad, these good, because that's not how it is at all. Like the Skrull, I was just
gonna say, like, I think it is a bit more nuanced than that, because there are lines where, like towards the end, where Talos, I believe, who's Ben Mendelsohn's main Skrull, he admits that like he's got blood on his hands type thing. Like war is a dirty game that tarnishes everyone involved.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as black and white, but it is quite an interesting turn to, because for years people have been speculating that Phase 4 or whatever would be about the scrolls coming and Secret Invasion, yeah. But like I do like how that's still on the table in a way, but they've done something quite interesting by flipping the allegiances of them and creating a more nuanced sort of refugee, grey, muddy war story instead of it being like all good heroes, all good enemies. So I think that's quite a cool wrinkle.
It is cool, but what I got out of it was like, I mean, you probably saw something I didn't there, but what I got out of it was that the Skrull were being hunted to extinction by the Kree, and there was only so many of them left, and they're looking for a new home world, which, but also, like, so what are how are they going to come back from that if there's only like 1,000 or so of them left? Like, what are they going to,
That's what screenwriters' jobs are.
Yeah, it's just, it bothers me. It keeps me awake at night.
I feel like it's a similar problem of scale that Marvel have always had. Like the same with the end of like Thor 3, which I guess I'm going to spoil right now. But like it, so if you haven't seen Thor 3, Ragnarok, tune out now for like a couple of minutes.
Why are you listening to spoilers of Captain Marvel if you've not watched Thor Ragnarok? Guys?
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, like how it ends with the destruction of Asgard. Thank you. And like you have all the refugees from Asgard all in one ship, and then in Avengers Infinity War, spoilers for Infinity War, but like they're basically decimated as well, and like knowing we haven't seen what foresight the writers have, or like if they understand the scale of like repopulating or whatever. I tend not to think about it. I feel like it's not worth getting too pent up about. But yeah, I see your point with that. Like, what is it? Where is it leading to bring in these characters and then give them so few people to play with?
Just bring them in and then just all of a sudden, just take them away again. Almost.
And especially on such an intergalactic scale as well. Like it doesn't compute. It feels like, and like that's another thing I feel with Marvel in general. Like with the Kree, I believe. It took me a while to realize that they were the same group of peoples that we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy. Is that right, or am I
Yeah, you're right. It's Ronin the Accuser. Yeah, it's the same.
But it's also the same, like, quote-unquote benevolent group that were in Guardians of the Galaxy, the ones who were trying to save their planet. Is that right? Or am I mixing stuff up? See, this is the kind of thing that I find really confusing with the Marvel films, where I don't even think you're expected to follow every single movie. I think it's just it wasn't clear in this film where the connections lied with the previous films. Like, I don't feel like that was communicated clearly, which didn't really affect my enjoyment of the film. Yeah. It just means that like where it's going after this and after Endgame, I don't feel like it's set up that very effectively.
Yeah, I can't see where it will. This is my problem with what they've done with the Skrull, you see, saying that the Skrull are actually, they're not bad guys and there's nothing like, where are they going to go after Endgame if not, with the rest of this, how are they going to build on that?
Well, they could easily do just another flipperoo like they did with the Skrulls, where we got to see a huge benevolent faction of the Kree, and now we see a fascist, murderous collection of the Kree, and then we'll see like another facet to them because there's such a huge population. And unless you guys have got another point to make on this, I feel like we're focusing too much on like the broader structure of the MCU. But like, what did you guys think of Carol as a character? Because I really enjoyed her. And God, I was going to say Alison Brie. Who am I?
Brie Larson.
Brie Larson. Thank you. And her portrayal of Carol Danvers. What did you guys think?
She was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought she was great, but then like I am a Brie Larson stan from way back, so like I've been looking forward to her for years in this role, and I think she even elevates weaker parts of the script, and I think she's able to embody a character that could easily become like some of the worst examples of like Superman, or some of the worst examples of a Captain America type, where they're super powerful, super good. So like with that, sometimes you sort of sand down rough edges and they're not interesting enough. But I think that the script and her performance work in tandem to create this like really cool version of this character. And I think that every time she's on screen, she's I think the movie moves a quite fun pace because
that's sorry, carry on. I was gonna make a point about what you were saying about rough edges, but I'll let you finish and then I'll do it.
Well, I was just gonna say, because like because a lot of this does rest on her, and it's an amnesiac story, you can fall into a trap of a character having no character because they don't know who they are. But I do like that even though she doesn't know her past, she's still she's still good. And the whole thing of her is that she's like good at what she does, even before she had the powers. So I do like that. That's an innate thing where she's just like, she's a soldier. She gets to business. So she lands on Earth and she's like, well, this is a new planet. Cool. Let me find out what the deal is with this stuff. And then just keeps moving forward. And I think like it's quite fun for that.
Yeah, definitely. To what you were saying about the rough edges and the Superman thing, like that's what I liked about this portrayal of Carol Danvers. Like, it retains that Marvel humanity that you get in the pages of Marvel Comics, whereas sometimes DC characters, when you read a DC book, can seem like lofty gods.
Yeah,
like or Superman especially, almost infallible sometimes, the ultimate force of good or whatever. It would be easy for them to fall into this trap with a character like Captain Marvel because of how powerful she is and everything else. But I like that they've kept the humanity from the pages of the Marvel Comics and been able to put that into the movie in such an and keep it that way, which is really nice. Yeah,
and then they've done like an even smarter thing with that, where like there's a trouble when you're making a movie like this, because it has to do so many things, and it's like the first solo like female led movie that they've done, and like there's a lot sort of by proxy weighing on the shoulders of a movie like this, and I like that they managed to hit all their goals and targets of making like a fun, enjoyable like comic book movie, but also work in a lot of what it appears to be like picking up elements of like the general like experience of like being a woman, and they managed to fit that stuff into the movie in a way that doesn't really beat you over the head, but instead it just feels like really good character moments, and stuff like that. I quite enjoyed, and like even going to the sort of main theme of like emotionality and how that's always put as a weakness on people, especially like women characters. And it's like it's the whole gaslight thing of like you're being emotional, and in this, actually being emotional is like the strength of her power, and it's quite a cool thing to see done so well.
I do like that because this is the kind of film where it has every opportunity to be too reactionary to like all the meta stuff, like the conversation, all the negative conversation that was around on the internet in the lead up to this movie, and it could easily have done a lot of like, I don't know, what I would call fuck you moments to the audience who's already like primed themselves not to like this movie because of who it represents or who's in it, or you know what it's about. And I like that it did it in slightly more like subtle ways. It, like you were saying, it wasn't preachy, but it used those character moments. So it used her, I don't know, her femininity, and like the fact that I like the moment where, like in the run up to before the movie, a lot of people were saying how Brie Larson doesn't smile, which is like a bullshit reason to not like a film or a character. And in the film, they put one moment where some dude tells her, "Why don't you smile? You look nicer." And she steals his motorbike, which I thought was epic. And then later on, we find out like that's not her character at all. She just doesn't reserve her, like she doesn't have to make herself anything for anybody except for herself. And we see her later like having a really good time with Samuel L. Jackson's character. And like that natural humor and happiness that comes from her when she's surrounded by people who she gets along with, like it's not performative. And I really liked that, where it could easily have been really heavy-handed, but it just made it part of her character. She only has time for the people she cares about, and I thought that was great.
Yeah. One of my favourite things about the way that they adapted Carol Danvers from the pages was the fact that they changed the way, like this is what I was talking about earlier when I said in keeping with the rest of the MCU, they changed the way in which she received her powers, because in the comics, the original Carol Danvers was caught in an explosion with Mar-Vell, and her DNA was fused with Mar-Vell's, and that's how she gained her powers, because the Kree were just like that. But in this, her powers actually come from the Tesseract, from the Space Stone, which is kind of cool, because that's in keeping with this theme that we've got going on at the moment, where she's almost similar to Scarlet Witch, for example, in the way that she gained her powers from the Soul Stone. Not the Soul Stone, sorry, the Mind Stone, isn't it?
I know, the one in the staff, whatever it was.
Yeah, because the Soul Stone is on a planet being guarded by emo cloak wearing Red Skull. So yeah, I think it's the Mind Stone. Yeah, it's the Mind Stone. But yeah, I thought that was kind of cool in how they adapted that to sort of fit in with the rest of the MCU. And
yeah. Sorry, I was going to cut in to say I really like how the MCU is doing like this very Dickensian thing where everything is linked back to everything.
Yeah,
and it's not it doesn't feel bloated yet. Like I like the fact that her powers come from the Tesseract, which was on Earth in the 90s, which was being looked after by Fury, and like all of this stuff where it falls in on its.
It's being guarded by a Flurkin.
All right, fine, a Flurkin, sure.
I've got two Flurkins, and they would be very, very annoyed.
Scene stealing Flurkin as well. I do love those kind of humorous elements to this plot. Like I really like, it's not taking itself too seriously, which it could so easily have done. And I don't know, to go back to the way that she got her powers, I thought that moment was beautifully shot. Like I love the way that it like drops into slow-mo and you see because it basically stems from Mar-Vell's ship being powered by the Tesseract in some manner, in some way or form, uses the Tesseract as a power source, and then she, in a moment of self-sacrifice and self-sacrifice, she chooses to explode the ship that Mar-Vell created, and like the powers from that, which sort of inexplicably, it doesn't explain why she didn't just get blown up, but like she absorbs the power from this, this sci-fi engine, and you see like the smoke and the like the blue from the energy like soak into her in slow-mo. I thought that was really cool.
That was awesome.
And we get that as if I'm not misremembering this, it happens really early on, like it's one of the first scenes we see that, but like out of context, and then we come back to it towards the end of the film. I thought that was a nice full circle.
What I like about this film is that it's an origin movie, but it doesn't actually feel like I'm being shown yet another origin movie. It doesn't feel... I mean, yes, it's an origin movie, and yes, we are being explained to about Captain Marvel and everything else, but it doesn't feel that way when you're watching it. It's not like you were seeing Spider-Man's origin yet again, or you are seeing Batman's origin yet again.
And I think that's down to how they present it. By presenting it in a non-linear fashion, how they do in this film, where it's heavily tied to the theme of memory, I think that is a way more interesting way to do it than how we normally get it, where we sort of see things, not in real time, but we see them linearly. Like, event happens, person is changed in some way, and then they have to figure out their like abilities, while at the same time a threat arises, and they sort of have to find out who they are, what their powers are, and overcome the threat. And in this, it flips it in a way, because she's powerful all along, and it's more about finding out about herself and being able to like unleash her power type thing instead of having to like gain it type thing. Which I think is quite cool.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it's not like you said, it's not a case of her discovering her strength. It's about her discovering that she's been hemmed in, which comes back to that theme of gaslighting and like how she's been told all along that these powers were given to her, but in fact, they were being limited by outside forces, and she had to learn to break that chain. I thought that's a really cool way to do it. And like this, something we talked about after the film, Leon, like I don't know if you wanted to make this point. I might be stealing this from you, but in the trailer, one of the things we all said we liked was the scenes of her like standing up as she goes from a child to a teenager to like young adult to her current state, where like one of the themes of the movie is she's human, so she knows to stand up. Like she keeps getting back up when she's knocked down, and how we loved that progression in the trailer, and we were expecting it to be, I don't know, cut together worse or like in separate distinct scenes in the movie, but they do the same thing in the movie, but if anything it's better. Like I don't know what your thoughts were on that particular moment.
Yeah, it's just sort of like that, to be honest. I do what I was expecting is it to feel like played out by the time we saw it in the film, and what I think the film did really well is because we get snippets of those elements before or for like the fall, and I think the moment where it builds, and you do have that bit that we have seen in the trailers, it just works so much better in the movie somehow. And I think that while it could have been like a super sentimental or sappy moment in the actual film, it works so well. And like you get such a rush as this. It's not even just a case of like because finding out you're human is kind of like a weakness, and with humanity actually being the strength is like a really a cool thing, and like just the way like the match on like motion and action and the way everything ties together, the music during that part, I think it works really well to get that general theme over.
You've brought me on to my next point, actually, just to kind of like round this off a little bit before we move on to comics, and that is the soundtrack. So I was just going to mention that me and Leon were having this discussion actually previously before we were recording, that we like kind of vibing off the soundtrack for this. Bit of garbage, bit of No Doubt. They were the highlights for me. I don't know about you guys. Ray, any highlights soundtrack wise?
Yeah, I mean, I liked all of the soundtrack. This is going to come into a point I wanted to make about just the general nostalgia of this film compared to another MCU nostalgia fest like Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't feel like the music moments worked for me quite as well, but I think they were doing something very different in this film than, say, James Gunn was doing with Guardians of the Galaxy, where like I felt like the music in Captain Marvel was sort of incidental. It felt like they were just picking songs from the 90s that were cool. And yeah, the soundtrack was great. I'm not saying it wasn't cool. I liked some of the choices, even some of the choices that people don't seem to like. So like Just a Girl was playing at some point in one of the final fight scenes, and I thought that was a bit on the nose, but like
that was great.
Yeah, some people have said they didn't like it because it was too on the nose, but I didn't mind it. It just felt. I think my thing was that none of it really felt very like diegetic the way it was in Guardians of the Galaxy, because like music was an integral part of that character's arc, and like the music itself had a place because he was holding on to like his past and his tape player and everything. And this was more just like, let's pick some cool hits from the 90s. I think it just did a very different thing, and it didn't it didn't have that same emotional twang as Guardians did for me. But
because none of them are really tied to theme.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It wasn't as natural and as knitted in as it was with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, like my touchstone when that fight scene came on, where it had Just a Girl, it felt very much like Kick-Ass, where Hit Girl is like fighting to bad reputation. It felt like that same sort of mood, which made me roll my eyes a little. But then I kind of like that song, so it didn't detract from.
It's a good song.
Yeah.
There's only one bit of that I can actually. There's only one bit where I thought it was like dropping a clanger a little bit, and that was the "Come As You Are" scene, because I just really didn't like that Nirvana song being there.
I just thought that was a weird choice.
It was a very odd choice. Could have picked
on
a better
vinyl
one
as well, which felt weird to me.
Yeah, could have picked a better one. I think a better song. Yeah, like there's probably like there's probably like a whole list of like tracks from the 90s that I could have put in that scene instead of that. But there we go. Yeah, it's a weird scene that. Because it was good, but at the same time, I didn't like it. I think
they also. Oh, sorry, go on.
I think it was just the AI hamming it up in the leather jacket. I was like, nah, too hammy.
On the flip side, they had again this where it felt really throwaway, but I liked their inclusion was some really cool like 90s R&B. So they had like Salt and Pepper, they had TLC, but again like. I think like Waterfalls was playing as she was driving down the road to somewhere, if I remember.
They were on their way to a military base. It was her and Nick Fury.
Yeah, it just felt like it was playing in the background for no reason. We get 10 seconds of it, and then it turns off. And I kind of wish they'd done more with that kind of thing, but, it'll make for a good CD at some point. So
yeah. That happens again when they turn up in... what state do they go to? Louisiana, is it?
Yeah, Louisiana.
Yeah. And you get like a brief snippet of... I can't remember what the song's called.
How does it go? Go on, sing it for us, Greg.
I don't know if I can.
I'm not sure what song it's about.
No, I can't sing it. Can I? Should I? No, I don't think I should. But it comes up for like 2 seconds and then goes away again. Rather the same as...
Are you thinking about You Gotta Be?
Yeah.
Like, you gotta be bad, you gotta be bold. That's right. Yeah.
That one.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It comes up for like 10, 15 seconds and then fades off. Yeah. It's weird.
Yeah. It's an odd thing to kind of like shoehorn. It feels like the soundtrack was an afterthought, in fact.
Yeah, in some ways, which is a shame because, especially when something like Guardians of the Galaxy used it so effectively, it seems almost a waste because, like, Guardians being the 80s version of a Marvel film and this having the opportunity to be a 90s nostalgia fest, it didn't really follow up on that. Yeah. At the same time, I liked how restrained it was. I was telling Marvin Leon after the film how, like, she walks into an internet cafe and I was fully expecting there to be, like, a modem, 56k modem gag. And they didn't do it, which shows like
it cut out and she had to redial.
But she didn't. It's not like It's not like she rolled her eyes and then it went bah, 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 bah. Like it did it in the background. It didn't do it as the punchline of a joke, and I thought that showed a lot of restraint because that would have been such a go-to.
Oh, they could have done all of that. They did the loading thing.
That worked for me. Another thing was like, in typical Marvel fashion, none of the jokes are given enough time to land. Like there's the beat when she lands in the blockbusters and shoots off Arnold Schwarzenegger's face from the True Lies standee, but like it happens in such a quick moment where you don't really get the chance to like actually laugh at it. Or like there's a fight scene where she's doing her quips, and it falls a bit flat for me because like she's saying. I don't know, Leon. Do you remember this moment where she's fighting people with the restrictors on her hands?
Oh, the first fight on the Skrull ship.
Yeah.
Do you guys know how these come off? No. Okay. Something like
that. And then it just kind of lands flat because it doesn't have enough time for you to register that she was making a joke, or like the audio mix is a bit weird because you could barely hear what she said, or at least I couldn't. So I think that's not specific to this film. That's typical of the MCU like movies in general, but that's a shame as well.
No, I think you get stuff like that. I think when there's so many writers, and this had a lot of writers on there, and I think you get that where it feels very disparate and sort of piecemeal.
Yeah,
that's the thing. I think the writing's at its strongest when it is about character and theme, and I think that tied with like the cast. You get a lot of good in those situations. So any scenes with the majority of scenes with Carol and Fury are really good in my opinion. I especially like any of the scenes with Carol and Maria Rambo. I actually wish there was way more of that in the film. I wish they had introduced her character way earlier in the movie and we got to spend more time with those two, because I don't know if it's just Larson and Lashana Lynch's chemistry, but I think in the small amount of time they had, they did really sell that friendship to me. Yeah. And it would have been nice if we got more of it, actually.
Those two would have been great as like a kind of like buddy movie with like those two as pilots or something, like a prequel to Captain Marvel. That'd be great.
I'd love to see Top Gun with these two.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, like a Top Gun type thing. That'd be cool.
Yeah,
yeah.
I want, like, there's a lot of, like with every Marvel film, there's a lot of moments that I really liked. I really liked when she was like redesigning her outfit. And you can tell, like, if she never became Captain Marvel, if she was just human her entire life, she would be such a PC Master Race RGB fan. Because I like she's got her little control panel and she like changes the RGB values of her suit using that. I thought that was cool.
To Easter egg there, when she goes white and green and it sticks for a while on white and green, that is the original Captain Marvel colours.
I think a lot of those were references, because even like the super colourful one was from a recent run of Captain Marvel. Like the bold neon, like white background and yellow and pink tones on the lines. Yeah.
And can we talk some more about our favourite Flurkin, Goose, please? Because Goose is awesome.
Another Top Gun reference, by the way. But yeah.
And Goose is actually called Chewie in the comics. In the comics, she is called Chewie, and in the comics, it's actually Rocket that has a problem and realises that Chewie is a Flurkin and Chewie lays 100 eggs.
Lovely.
Yeah. And Rocket wants to kill Chewie. Rocket's like, you can't have that. I have to kill that.
Yeah, it's like, understandably so. Like we saw what it did to Fury. So I love that callback to like how he lost his eye. I love that that's the explanation where it's almost so incidental and he barely reacts to it happening.
Yeah.
Like, but he gets his mother Flurkin line, but like, it's really undersold, and I like that it's the start of his
the thing.
His
the start of his missing eye thing and whatever. The thing that truly slayed me about the Flurkin was when they put the little Hannibal mask on her. That's great. I love that bit.
Flurkin gets some good moments.
Yeah. So, all in all, it's a good warm-up for Endgame. It was a great watch both times, and I was into it. And, yeah, although it might not be top-tier MCU, it's definitely a good watch. And I would recommend going to see it. Kind of Rogue One-ish in its positioning, because it's like filling in a gap that we already sort of knew what happened but didn't know, sort of thing. So if you are just tuning back in now, this is when we're going to start talking about comics. So we're done with the Captain Marvel stuff. You are safe. And I would like to open the comic chatter with Ronin Island #1. So this is something all three of us have read, I assume. And I'm correct? Yes. So this is a book called Ronin Island, and this is by writer Greg Pak, who is the guy that did Met Cadet U, which me and Ray were vibing on. If you want to go back and check out some of our previous episodes, there's a lot of Met Cadet talk. I suppose I should read the blurb. After a mysterious attack wipes out the major cities of 19th century Japan, Korea and China, survivors from all three lands find refuge on a hidden island and build a new society. Hana, the orphaned daughter of Korean peasants, and Kenichi, son of a great samurai leader, have little in common except for a mutual disdain for each other. But these young warriors will have to work together when an army invades the island with shocking news. There is a new shogun, and the island is expected to pay fealty in exchange for protection from a new enemy, a mutated horde that threatens to wipe out all humanity. Ray, first impressions of this book, if you please.
I was brought onto it by the fact that it's written by Greg Pak, but mostly just I like the aesthetic. I like this sort of Western take on the Japanese style, and and if you read the comic, you'll realize that it's not really honing in on the Japanese, even though it's called Ronin Island, and the Ronin is a Japanese archetype. It's actually focused on the like bringing together of 3 different cultures, so it's Korean, Chinese, and Japanese together, and I think it sells this aesthetic really well because it has this sort of Shogun era buildings and landscape and like clothing that you'd expect, but it just has like this nice modern Western sort of style to it, which I really dug. And yeah, I really enjoyed these characters. I like that it's another story that I as I expected from Greg Pak about young people being powerful and like being positive and strong and like fighting for themselves. And I really enjoyed it. How about you, Leon?
Yeah, I found it quite a promising starter. I think, as you say, the aesthetic is really cool. I think it does a good job sort of pulling in all these different cultural elements, and you really get the feeling that this island is like a ragtag bunch of refugees who are sort of following this like horrible tragedy, have sort of formed their own new society, and there are still some of those past resentments, even if they're under the radar a bit, for the various different clashes between the cultures at this time. But I think that it does get to the heart of what it would be like because you kind of get like elements of like a Battlestar Galactica type vibe, where it's all these people who are just like pushed together and different cultures having to push forward, and they carry on these like rites of passage from like various different old ways, and they are sort of creating this new thing. And yeah, I think that if anything, like it starts to set up what the rest of the book's going to be about. And without spoiling anything, it's a bit more, let's say, supernatural in nature. And I would have been happy had that not been the case, and it was just about the aforementioned Shogun. Like, that dynamic could have been cool. Or I would have been fine to read, like, 4 issues of them dealing with that stuff, and then they drop that stuff, because I feel like the point that we get in this book, I still don't really know much about Kenichi or Hana. I just got tiny little grace notes from the sort of coming of age task battle thing they had to do.
Yeah,
I don't really have a sense of who they are. Just sort of bits and bobs, and I could have lived on the island for a bit longer before the inciting incident happened.
See, I liked it because I got mad RPG vibes from it. Like the beginning of an RPG story where you've got these 2 rivals that end up having to work together, and then they will have to go off and recruit other people to their party to fight the big bad.
Yeah, I kind of like how I get where you're coming from, Leon, because I could easily just live on this island with these characters and be okay with that. Although I don't think you were saying you didn't like the reveal at the end, but like you would have been fine if it was drawn out a bit longer. I kind of agree with that. But I do like how broad the archetypes are. I like that it's the rich, stuffy kid against the poor, stubborn kid, and like there's something satisfying about those kind of archetypes. But yeah, I like what we got. I do like the like funny contrivance of them finishing their coming of age task and then immediately being besieged by outsiders, like in the same. Yeah, it made me chuckle, but like not in an eye-rolling way.
Yeah, that's RPG as hell, because that's like the kind of thing you get when like character A that you get to rename has to go off and help his dad chop wood and wakes up late and gets woken up by his little sister. And then like as soon as he gets back from chopping wood, he has his coming of age ceremony, and right in the middle of coming of age ceremony, meteor hits the town or something like that. You know, it's just this RPG pacing that I love. And I know you guys were saying you could have lived in the town a little bit longer, but I wouldn't have wanted to. I'm quite happy with the pace of this. I quite like the fact that there's immediate threat and immediate hook, something to keep me coming back. because I don't know if that's just me, if I have like a tiny attention span or something, but
well, when I flip that page and there's like the full page spread of the the incoming attackers, I thought Greg is gonna love this book.
Oh yeah,
like I immediately thought of you when I saw that.
Greg loved it. Greg loved it enough to want to buy. He's going to buy the trade when that comes. But yeah,
yeah. I wanted to shout out the colorist Irma Nivilla. I think I'm butchering that likely. I think that the uses of like blue during their like test against each other when they're like on the seed, that so many different textures. It feels, it has this great feeling of like you have the island and then you have the rest of the world, and I thought that stuff was really good. And then later in the book, the uses like browns, oranges, and reds when the shogunate forces appear are so cool. Like the way they reflect off different textures. It's so ominous,
like fire on the horizon style.
They
suddenly like dominate the skyline kind of thing.
Yeah,
and there's like good use of like silhouettes and like misty effects and like just particles in the air, and like it does have this cool feeling of signaling everything that you know before everything these characters knew before is going to change again.
Yeah, and it's like it's action packed and it's anime-esque like Greg Pak's other work. We talked about Mecha U, and I'm drawing a distinction here by saying it's anime-esque rather than manga-esque because it actually feels more animated. Like I could see this as a movie or an OVA or something because it just really does have that vibe, and the art style with the dynamic loose scratchy lines helps that because that kind of like speeds everything up, and when you're seeing it you can almost see it in motion.
Yeah, like it's not like, to make the Mecha U comparison again, it's not super clean. Like the illustrator Janice Milona Giannis, I think. I hope I haven't butchered that. As an aside, I love that his or her name is like Bond, James Bond, Janice Milona Giannis. Anyway, like I think the illustrations is because it's kind of like more flowing and loose. It has that more animated style. It doesn't, like you're saying, it feels more like an anime than a manga in that sense. Yeah, I really like what it's doing, and I also like some of the incidental like speed lines and things where there's a lot of like dashes above people's heads and like to like express surprise and movement. I think they're really, really little like small nudges of movement. I think it come across really nicely.
Yeah, it's really cool for that. The art style really gives it that kind of like dynamic animatedness that's just great. It's just and like it's this very animated texture to like the whole affair basically. It's just great, and the I think the colours are fantastic as well, like to go back to what Leon was saying about the colours, and I think what they do for me is they work brilliantly to help describe the island and the locale. They give us like a real sense of place and time, and it's like a subtle palette that works really, really hard because as you notice, as we go through the book, the day progresses and the light changes and everything else, and the colours change with that. So by the time the Shogun's dudes turn up, it's like almost sunset. And you really get that from the colours being used and everything else. It just kind of gives it that, like, sort of helps you kind of like, helps bring everything together and helps give everything a context. And then, of course, the designs of the Bionin, like the character designs are great, but the character designs of the Bionin, I mean, how am I supposed to, am I saying that right, Ray? Bionin, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the zombie dudes, like, those guys are like, yeah, I love them, and you were right, I would love them. They're great. So yeah, I mean, all in all, this is like a fun little book, and I enjoyed it very much, and that is Ronin Island #1. And to run through credits for that, we have, it's written by Greg Pak, illustrated by Yanis Milona Yanis, coloured by Irma Kinvilla, lettered by Simon Boland, and we have a cover by Yanis Milona Yanis with colours by Masick. And yeah, there's a couple of variant covers. There's a David LaFuente one and an Ethan Young one as well.
Yeah, like the main cover is awesome. Like that, as you're talking, it does have that JRPG vibe, and you have the two lead young characters standing there with all these like flags, but they're all damaged in a certain way, and like the coloring and just the texture is really good.
Oh, give me a PlayStation logo across the top of that.
Yeah.
Definitely. No, it's great. I love it, and it's another nice one from Boom Studios. So that is Ronin Island. Now, from there is one that me and Leon had. We kind of like vibed on this from the pull list last episode, and this is Morning in America, which I don't know about you, Leon, but I mean, as a comic, technically, I cannot fault it. It's great, but I did have an issue with this, and I think it's a personal one for me. And I think it's just probably just me that has this problem, because, like I was saying previously, I have the attention span of a gnat. But I think it was the pacing. What I will do is I'll read you the blurb. The year is 1983. A series of disappearances afflicts Tucker, Ohio, following the opening of a mysterious new factory. But when the town finds itself under siege from strange monsters, it's up to intrepid girl gang of no-account teen delinquents to try and figure out what's happening and save everyone's lives before it's too late. Now, it sounds really awesome, and the book itself is great. I mean, there's a lot I loved about it. It's just the fact that it felt like part one of issue 1. And I don't know why. I don't know if you felt the same, Leon?
Well, I generally feel that with a lot of number ones, to be honest. But in this case, not more so than anything else. But continue.
So, like I was saying, like I read this and you know, decent premise, a bunch of great characters and ideas. Like, I loved everyone in it. I was getting some real like mad Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles vibes from the team, the girl gang that they had going on. Like, I could assign each one of them to a turtle. It was great. But like, there just wasn't enough going on to hook me in issue 1. Like, I didn't feel like, I mean, for me, it just felt like a lot of small town stuff, and it maybe went too hard on the small town stuff, and everything that was to my taste that is interesting that was happening in the back was happening in the background, like the disappearances and everything else. It just seemed like background noise, and it just didn't feel like. And then to end the comic where it ended, like it felt like they could have taken it a little bit further and ended it, I don't know, at a more urgent cliffhanger, a more urgent point. I don't know. But that was my take.
I guess because it's kind of like, it's a comedy note, isn't it? Whereas like you wanted more of a hook.
Yeah.
Because
like,
the information that's provided at the end of the issue is not news to us, but it's news that a character is telling other characters.
Mm.
So we don't have a bombshell to learn. Instead, it's them trying to convey the bombshell to their friends.
Yeah, and it just doesn't feel like that's why it feels like half an issue, because they do all of that. They set everything up. They have all this great characterization, and they introduce these awesome characters, but then they just play with them for a bit, and we don't actually get to see what's going on. Like, I'd love a bit more. Ray's going to shoot me now, because I'm going to say I'd love to see more of the monster and more of the...
Hey, you do you, man. It's cool.
Yeah.
You like what you like.
Yeah, I know. That's my issue with it. It just didn't move along fast. And I would have liked for it to have ended with this like group of cool characters, like actually, you know, coming face to face with this thing, or being inside this factory that's been set up in this town that they're talking about investigating, rather than, you know, them just going, let's check it out, end the book.
Yeah, I can see that, and I could have called that. Like, for me, it's a bit different. So I think the characterization in this is really good. I think it's really economical. Using some on-screen cheats, because you have a cool thing where you have a panel where the speech bubbles basically give us a little rap sheet when they're introducing the characters to us, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I think just in a few interactions, we get a good sense of the main four of the six sisters.
Mm.
of their personalities, and we get a bit of home life for Nancy, and this issue sort of focused on Nancy a bit more.
Yeah.
And I think that stuff's really cool. I think the character designs are quite specific and have this sort of America 80s feeling without being like too ridiculous. And it does, like you say, have that small town vibe and sets off this like mystery.
Yeah.
But it's funny for me because like the end sort of falls flat for me in a different reason to you, because you want to see the monster and I don't care about the monster. And that's the thing. Like I think that, and this is harsh because I don't want to compare it directly, but I think that one of the problems is that we've had like 80s a bunch of girls together doing cool stuff, and it was Paper Girls, and that is a bit more immediate in getting into its hook.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's heavier, like stylized. But I think this works on its own merits in different degrees, and I would agree with you that I think that the issue could have been longer, or it could have wrapped up in a more of a hook place. But I think at this point I don't know what its focus is, and if its focus is on characters, which elements of it kind of suggest that, like how we meet the characters and how we follow them, that I think it's successful in that way. And I think that Visaggio and Aguirre do a good job of sort of giving us this portrait of this town and these characters.
Oh yeah, indeed. I you know, the characterization is great and it's important. It's just the fact that for me it didn't because I know comics are difficult to make and we have constraints of like how many pages that, you know, like, and things like that. There are constraints on page numbers and what you can and can't like get away with and things, and how things should be. And it's just, it feels like this could have done with being double length or an oversize to get across what I would have liked it to have got across, because it felt like they were cutting it in half.
Yeah, or maybe economical, because there is a bit of a storyline. It's only a case of like 2-3 pages, but it does feel like an unnecessary complication. And I don't want to go into too much detail, but to do with the cigarette thing and the brother, I feel like that could have been a bit more straightforward to get us to where we need to be.
I think that was the point where I thought, okay, where's this going? Because that's, you know, I know that they're basically trying to get in the explanation, like they're trying to get the six sisters to care, basically, because this is a bunch of people that don't seem to care about an awful lot.
Yeah,
apart from each other, and then
maybe it would have worked better. And this is armchair comic writing, but maybe it would have worked better for us if say the main character had a sister who was taken. Or a brother who was taken or something, and then it becomes immediately more personal, not just there's something strange going on in this town, which it kind of wraps up on. Whereas, like, if there was more of a personal connection, it sort of heightens the stakes and adds a bit more immediacy. Yeah.
But, I mean, all in all, it's still a very good comic, and, you know, I loved the art and the colours. I got this mad Sat AM, like, thing from it. Like it just felt like a Saturday morning. The way the art was done and everything, it was just had this like Saturday morning cartoon vibe that for me was great and is in fitting with the 80s aesthetic that they've given this thing and the 80s time it's set in and everything else. It just felt really good, and it's just a shame that it's just such a shame that it couldn't have gone on a bit longer. I mean, you know,
I think they're tested to be told on how the second issue plays out, because if the second issue ends and it isn't really going in a direction that interests you, then you know that you can sort of it's not gonna get there for you. Whereas the second issue might like sort of make the road forward clearer.
Yeah, maybe. It wasn't as it just like the cover was super rad as well. Like that was like the cover was like one of the like I loved that with the skeleton and the girls reflected in the shades of the skeleton. That was brilliant for me. Like I loved that cover. That cover just sold the book to me. It's just
I think there's promise here, like just with like use of the title and this whole thing of like the factory and stuff like that. I think there's a bigger, and the cop's not talking about certain things. Like I think there's a bigger thing at foot here that could make the whole thing more interested and probably pull you back in.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. It moved a little slow for me, I guess, is the TLDR of what I'm trying to tell you. But yeah, it was great. I loved it. Definitely loved it. Other than the fact that I found it a little bit hard going because there was no hook in it for me. But yeah, it was great. So that is Morning in America, and full list of credits for that we've got written by Magdalene Visaggio, illustrated by Claudia Aguirre, lettered by Zach Sam. We have a cover by Claudia Aguirre, a cover by Elizabeth Beals, and there's a cover by Ree Abrego too. And yeah, it's just it's a very pretty book. It's very nice. I like it. It's it's gorgeous to look at, definitely, and that cover is amazing. But yeah,
that's a very Greg cover.
It is, yeah. But yeah, that is Morning in America, and I just hope that issue 2 delivers. I really do, because I want to like it. I want to like it more. Next on the list is Ray. I think you were going to tell us about something, weren't you?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about Die, that's D-I-E, the new-ish comic by Kieran Gillen, which we've talked about issues 1 and 2 in the past, I believe, but I wanted to touch on issues 3 and 4. So, like, without beating a dead horse, because you guys have already just mentioned the problem with issue 1s, and we talk about the problem with issue 1s a lot, like how hard it is to judge a comic based on its first issue, where the creative team have the opportunity to make decisions that hopefully effectively communicate the intended tone and theme of the story to follow, and not all comics get this right? Like, indeed, it seems not all teams consider the pacing of their opening issues in the grander scope of the story, and instead use it like a pilot to see what works and then adjust it as they go. So in the instance of Die, I won't go into the art by Stephanie Hans or the lettering by Clayton Cowles, because we've touched on that in previous episodes. And the art remains just as beautiful and awash with like this diffused fantasy romance that, we've talked about and was established from the very first panel of the first issue. Instead, I want to kind of comment on the plot of Die issues 3 and 4, because Die is a really fantastic example of a story where its first few chapters are really well considered. It's doing like a really perfect, not quite bait and switch, but like I want to call it a bait and switch to grab the reader's interest before really subtly Trojan horsing in new ideas which don't jar from what they've established from the first issue and the first page. Like, I'm being deliberately vague because I don't really want to spoil anything. And it's not really a mind-blowing revelation, but issue 3 introduces a new element into the current mix of, I think what we said as like Dungeons and Dragons RPG meets Jumanji Spiriting Away, which is the plot that we've seen so far. But it adds this new element in the form of literary allusions, bringing it a lot closer to my original thought of it being like very Sandman inspired, because that's the feeling I got from the beginning. And so the author, Kieran Gillen, even outlines this process himself in the notes of issue 3, stating that where issue 1 was the pitch, issue 2 is the frenzied tasting platter, and then issue 3 is a, quote, "Oh, we're also this," end quote. So issue 3 brings in this new meta element, which, if it was treated with like a heavier hand, could easily feel out of place, but they managed to weave in all of these threads together without any one diluting or like overshadowing the other. And then issue 4 springs back to the more traditional D&D adventure scenario, and then takes a moment to breathe after bringing in these new elements from issue 3. So issue 4 has some like genuinely heart-rending moments, which weave together an understanding of like the characters and an understanding of the complicated gaming logic that dictates their role-playing archetypes. So there's this moment in which a character self-professes, like they do this RPG-ish action, which could feel so trite, but she says that it's so stupid and small, but I'm so happy, and I'm right there with them in what this moment is. And like Dai feels like a mastery of everything that I love about video games and role-playing fantasy narratives, in that it knows that these archetypes and like from the outside seemingly arbitrary logistical restrictions, such as a magic character needing to consume an item before they can cast spells, it can easily fall into becoming trite and mechanically dull, but when used right, can be shorthand for a much larger like character trait, so i.e. the nature of addiction in a role which demands you to be an addict. And that was something that was established in the second issue of Dai. And like the best touchstone I can think of to express this is like Thor's hammer in Age of Ultron, where the payoff of what can be seen as like a gimmick that only the worthy can wield Mjolnir is set up in the party scene where even the most virtuous Avenger is only able to nudge the hammer. So when the newly introduced and suspicious Vision nonchalantly hands Thor his own hammer, it transcends the gimmick and really definitely explains so much about what that character is. And this book is doing that like every other page, and I adore it. And I know that you guys are already into it, but like I know that you haven't caught up on issues 3 and 4. But Greg, based on how much you love like D&D rules, I think you should pick this up and continue and persist, because it's so damn good. And that's the piece I wanted to say about Dai. I think everyone should read it, especially if they're fans of games or fantasy or D&D or just like the gaming logic in general.
I need to hop back on that horse in between reading everything else.
Yeah, I hope I've sold it for you again. Yeah, no, it doubles down on it.
I was sold on it anyway. It's just something where it's one of those things where I've been waiting, and I'm going to get it when it comes to trade.
I think that's fair. But again, I was really impressed by the turn that it kind of does in issue 3. That again, I don't want to spoil, but like, it's not a huge revelation, but it's also doing more than we even suspected from the first couple of issues, and it's doing it well. Yeah.
Cool. Right then, so what I'm about to do is I'm about to take you guys into space, but I'm going to take you into space via Saturday Night Fever.
Okay.
So this is a comic called Astro Hustle. And this is Astro Hustle #1, and this is a 70s sci-fi B-movie space disco of neon explosions.
Oh, I just googled the cover for this. It looks like an old like Atari cartridge or something, or like this looks great. Like neon.
It's oh my god, yeah. I'm just going to read the blurb. So, Chen Underlu, the black sheep of a prominent activist family, returns after being accidentally put in cryostasis for 60 years. Chen, a cosmic criminal, wakes up to find his younger brother is now the president of the galaxy. Chen does what he knows best. He steals stuff and causes a problem. So, where do I start? Honestly, like, gorgeous art with a retro edge. It's bold, it's bright, it's as in your face as the story content. I mean, this is like has Flash Gordon like pumping through its veins. Like this is the kind of world we're going into. The best way to describe it is to bring up, the Guardians of the Galaxy 2. The Guardians Inferno music video. Have you guys seen that? Obviously, I'm assuming you both have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that. It's that. And it's, there's the 70s porn stashes and all that stuff. It's cheesy, it's cheeky, and it's a really brilliant slice of retro sci-fi. The character designs and the ship designs are fantastic. I like this whole 17th, 18th century British Navy pirate thing that they've got going on with this, like in space. So 17th, 18th century pirates with a bit of disco flair, and the 17th, 18th century British Navy with a bit of disco flair, and then like just put it in space, and you've pretty much got what we're looking at. it has me hooked. It feels very fresh and it's bold and it's what I needed. Like on that particular day as well, after I finished work, I sometimes I go and pick my comics up, and because Sophie finishes like an hour or two after me sometimes, some days. So on Wednesdays, if that happens, I go and pick up my comics, and then what I do is I go and sit in cafe and buy a coffee and sit and read my comics in a coffee shop, because that's not the most hipster thing I think I've ever done or will ever tell you that I do. I go buy like a hazelnut latte or something and just go and sit and read it. But yeah,
never be ashamed of who you are, Greg.
Yeah. I read this in Cafe Nero and like straight after work, and it just completely lifted my spirits because it's just so electric, this whole book. It's just like exactly what I needed. And it like the opening 2 pages, if that doesn't sell this to you, I don't know what will. Because you'd be forgiven to think you've walked in on a porno with the opening 2 pages. Like the setup, is like the setup's there, but then it does something else. It's great. With the colours being super bright and bold as well, it just helps with the aesthetic they're building and trying to sell, and it really draws you into this kaleidoscopic, eclectic world of aliens and flamboyant sci-fi styling, and it's incredibly dynamic and expressionistic as well. And it's just got this like beautiful retro comic book cartoon feel to it, and it's just fantastic for that. And you know, it's fast paced, but in a good way, and you want to let it carry you off into the laser fire, and that's exactly what happens. And I must say that I'm a particular fan of there's a particular sequence in here with a prison escape sequence towards the end where this like fucking space galleon crashes into a wall with like some weird battering ram thing, and then people get out of their prison cells and they're like some space pirate ship, and somehow this thing can like do like warp speeds and stuff, but like how do people breathe on the deck and everything? I don't know, but also I don't care. It's it's just fantastic. And it's something you should all consider adding to your pull list because it's only 4 issues long. And oh my gosh, yeah, the whole thing is just inspired. It's funny, it's, you know, bright, bold, silly, violent, everything that Greg looks for in a comic. And I believe that you two should probably check it out because I think you will both love it. Definitely. So that is Astro Hustle number 1, and for a list of credits, we have the story by A. Jai Nitz, art is Tom Riley, colours Ursula Decay, and letters by Crank, and that's Crank with an exclamation mark. And yeah, it's just like, it's great. It doesn't pull any punches, and I love it. Yeah, it's like probably like one of my favourite comics in the past 6 months, I'd have to say, actually. So onward from there to the next thing on our list, which I believe is the fact that Leon has been checking out the second part of Umbrella Academy, second trade.
Yes, Dallas. I've not got too much more to say about this, but it is interesting reading this, having watched half the show, and also like the time that's passed since this came out.
Because, sorry, just to say, this is what I meant when you remember when we were talking about Umbrella Academy before, and I said that it leans heavily on the second trade.
Yeah,
the show does. Yeah, you get what I mean now.
A bit, because I'm only halfway through the show, but yeah. Especially with the Hazel and Chacha stuff, who are sort of repurposed a little bit in the show. But yeah, it's more of what you got from the Apocalypse suite in the first run, and yeah, it's more time with them. We get to like find out more about these characters and get a bit more backstory on number 5 and what the hell he was up to and why he's such a badass now. And you get some really cool like action scenes and like battles and like fights, and the Dallas in it refers to the JFK assassination, which plays a big part in there. And the first issue has a really cool cover with number 5 just holding a sniper rifle.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we said, the previous episode, very dark. This comic. Actually,
not as dark as the show. That was something I was going to bring up. Like, having read this, I found this was like, it was more. It's more upbeat than the show. Actually, it's got more of a sense of humor than the show has. Like the first trade, because I've now read Apocalypse Suite and I've started Dallas. Like.
I think they're dark in different ways, because I think the dark stuff here, because the show has more time to have like character interactions, that's when you get that stuff. But I think because there's so little time in these books, which is only like 6 issues each story, I think some of the stuff is more implicit and more unsaid or in the background, which is quite like the implication of them is quite dark.
Yeah.
I'm going to finish the show that I just find hour-long Netflix shows. Stop this nonsense, Netflix.
Oh, I just like...
You other streaming shows. Like, there's only one network that are allowed to do hour-long shows, and that's HBO, and they've proved themselves.
Oh, man, Netflix can do it, because I tank
No, they
stuff.
can't. I don't think they can either.
I can sit there and I can just churn through it. Like, do you know what, like, it's really distressing for me at the moment? It's the fact that, like, we've got Brooklyn Nine-Nine Season 5 now on Netflix, and I've almost finished it already, and I only started watching it on Friday.
Those are half an hour, or 20-minute eps.
That's what
comedy
I mean.
shows
it's distressing. Like, why can't that be longer? Why can't I have hour of Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
It wouldn't be funny anymore. Like... But that's the thing, like the pacing really suffers for me with a lot of these Netflix shows, and I think it's a hand-in-hand thing, where it's not just that they're all hour-long episodes when they don't really need to be, but it's also they're not episodes in the traditional sense. So many of these Netflix shows trying to do that thing where it's one story split into 10 or 13 or whatever, and I think Netflix misses that more than they hit that. Whereas like HBO would hit that, but so it does make it harder, and like it makes them more bingeable, definitely. Yeah. But like, when you've watched 2 episodes back to back, and I'm just like, oh my god, I could watch another episode, but do I have another hour? I don't know. So I found the series, like when I'm watching it, it's fun.
Yeah.
But when I finish an episode, I'm not hungry to jump to the next.
Leon,
even though I have been enjoying these comics quite a lot.
Leon, there's always another hour. There's always more peanut butter cups in the fridge.
Yeah, you say that though, and there is another hour, but that hour I can relocate to something like that uses that hour more effectively.
Yeah, but sometimes I just don't want to.
and that's what's I think that's what's brutal in this particular case, because I've been reading the book, which is like the Cliff Notes version of a story, even though it is the story.
Yeah.
Then to watch the Netflix one where they like, we're going to give you this story, but we're going to stretch it out over like 10 hours. I could have read the 3rd trade, like the time I've spent collectively reading Umbrella Academy, and I read comics quite slow, is it's like the time it takes for me to watch like maybe a 1/3 of the season.
I piled through the first trade in an afternoon. But I'm quick at reading. Like, I watch shows, I binge shows, but I binge comics as well. So I'm just fast with both. But like, I don't know. It's like when I pulled an all-nighter and watched all of Stranger Things in one night. It's just, I can just do that. I don't know why I can do that. I just can. Like, my attention span isn't good for anything else. But
I think what happened to me is that I was a big proponent of binge watch TV, and then we hit peak TV, and now I'm kind of over binge watch TV, but now it's the main model to watch TV. But like I've done that already, and now I kind of miss episodes. I miss like things building up, and I miss having some breathing room between episodes. I miss talking to people about like theories about what we think is going to happen. I do kind of miss that. And it's not before, when I was binge watching stuff, the stuff had been released as episodes already, and I was just waiting for the season to end and watch it all in one go. But now things are being made to binge watch, which means that I don't even get that benefit anymore, because I can watch 3 episodes and they've deliberately made it so there's things that are just not even going to make any sense until like episode 8. Whereas like before, you'd have these little hints of stuff that was coming and you could theorize and stuff. So I mean, I watch it all, and there's none's better than the other. But I'm just saying, man, it's hard now. It's hard. I'm having trouble with it.
More importantly, have you gone back and listened to the Black Parade now? Having had this as a lens? No,
I was going to do it after I finished Hotel Oblivion, which I was hoping to read before this cast, but I haven't had time yet. But I'm going to read that. But then, because I wanted to finish it and then be back on my bullshit and dive in on. So I'm going to bless myself with the Black Parade after I've eaten my greens.
Yeah, I went back and watched the Black Parade, listened to the Black Parade, sorry, after watching the show and before reading the comics, and I get it now, and I'm eating enormous slabs of humble pie. But yeah, no, it's great. I actually liked it, and having, like, I mean, I know that's probably not the intention, but having like Umbrella Academy as context, like, gave me something to anchor that album to, and now it's actually really good. But yeah, so that is the Umbrella Academy, and we gave out credits for that last time, but I can do that again. So the creative team, story is by Jared Way, art is by Gabriel Barr, colours by Dave Stewart, letters by Blambot's Nate Piercos, cover art by Gabriel Barr, and we've got alternate covers by a whole army of people, including Jim Lee, and James Jean, who did the artwork for the Black Parade album. So he did the art for like the inside of the album cover and stuff like that. Yeah, and it works. So that is Umbrella Academy Dallas. So next one on the list is another Greg one, and this is a book called Assassination. Now, again, where do I start with this? Because it's foul-mouthed, it's violent, it's fun, and punches this comic does not pull. Like, one of the characters is literally called Fuck. I mean, yeah. It's just, yeah, oh my gosh, yeah. I'll read the blurb.
What the hell is this?
I'll read the blurb. So, Assassination. Hot off her breakout success at Marvel, 2-time Eisner Award winner Erica Henderson, the unbeatable Squirrel Girl and Jughead, teams up with Kyle Starks, writer of Sales Beast, Rick and Morty, for a hilarious twist on the hitman trope that will have readers laughing in the aisles over Assassination. The world's former greatest hitman hires 20 of the best assassins in the world to be his bodyguards. These mean-as-hell hired guns and murderers must work together to keep the new crime boss safe while attempting to solve the mystery of who's trying to off him. With the same laugh-until-you-cry spirit of action comedies like Hot Fuzz, Tropic Thunder and Deadpool, Assassination is the bombastic side-splitting murder fest you've been waiting for. And boy, does it deliver. So, this is, like, yeah, it's hilarious. It's this nicely detailed cartoon art, and it finds its strength in the wonderfully bombastic and diverse Volume 11 world of Contract Killers. As, you know, we have just heard in the blurb, all of these characters have their own quirks and unique designs, and it was like looking at a box of G.I. Joe toys or Masters of the Universe toys, where you've got like all these different characters and they all have like this one thing that they do, this different thing, like they're all dressed differently, or they all like, everyone's so like extrapolated, like everything is this massive caricature of everything else. It's great. And they all have these unique designs, and one thing that actually came into my head when I was reading this is how much I actually want a line of action figures based on the characters in this comic, complete with assassin scorecards and bios. So on the back of some action figure boxes when you were a kid, on the back of, say, if you bought a Transformer, you would get a little card that would have that guy's or that particular Transformer's specialisms and whatever else, and their power ratings, and you could play top trumps with them. So this is what I want for these assassins. I you know what, even better, I want a card game, a top trumps card game with these assassins, especially some of the names as well. It's great. The writing is awesome. It has this comedic edge, which it pulls from the downright detachedness of the world that we're going into. This blown out world of contract killers where everyone knows everyone, and there's a ranking system, and everyone's a fan of everyone else's work. And it's just this whole scene where they just introduce themselves to it, because this guy, when he invites them all to a party, this number one crime boss throws a party he invites them all into his home, and they're all just kind of schmoozing and drinking beer and being oh yeah, hey, you're the guy that did this, and you're the guy that killed 6 guys with 1 bullet and all this, and they're all kind of getting each other's autographs and stuff like that, and it's just so surreal. It's great. I don't know how this ranking system is regulated, by the way, or how they decide who's number one, but I have yet to fully find out, and I'm invested. I want to know, because it's great. It's just chock full of amazing action sequences, which I will draw attention to some particular gems. There's a 3-panel neck snapping sequence, which is really cool. And the breakdown of action on the page and how it's communicated is great. This 3-panel, you could, when you think about breaking someone's neck, you could do it in 2 panels, right? Or you could even do it in a single panel. You could just show the head turning. But to break it down into 3 panels kind of makes it more visceral, and you can actually kind of see it and feel it, broken down like that. It's just so much better.
You know what this whole thing sounds like? It sounds like what I assumed that the Continental TV show is. That it's John Wick World set TV show. This is what it feels like.
This is this sounds like what I wanted the John Wick comic to be, instead of it being focused on John Wick, but being focused on colourful cast of assassins. Sounds cool.
It's the three short panels is the perfect measure of time for a neck snap. I stand by that now. Now I've been shown it in this book. I stand by it. That is the perfect amount of time to spend on snapping someone's neck. It's perfect how they do it as well. And oh my gosh. Some of the onomatopoeia in this book is amazing as well. The only word for it, really, to be honest. If I said to you that someone got scanners-ed, and the word scanners-ed was an onomatopoeia as it was happening,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's funny.
Or if I said that someone got Troma-d, for example, and Troma-d was the onomatopoeia as it was happening, what would you think was happening to those people?
Those are good film nerd onomatopoeias, I think.
Yeah. It works so well, and the Troma-d one's, inspired. The lettering design on it's amazing. It's just all brains and eyeballs, and it looks like an oozy pile of meat splattered across this, awesome action sequence of 3 guys getting Troma-d by 1 bullet. It's just I'm not going to tell you what Troma-d is. You either know or you don't. But it's fantastic. And the bit where the guy gets scanners-ed by the sniper at the beginning of the book, that's brilliant too. And it's really satisfying to say these out loud as well. So, and then to top it all off, the cherry on top of this entire book is this double-page spread of a car exploding. I can't talk about it with a straight face.
It sounds like it's the prototypical Greg book.
Oh yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. You sound like you're having a lot of fun with it, so that's cool.
Oh yeah. I think you two need to read this. You need to check out issue 1 because it's insane. And it's just I want to frame those 2 pages, the bit where it all kicks off, I want to frame those 2 pages with the car explosion. I want to frame the bit where it all kicks off and we get this like grid of everybody pulling weapons.
Yeah, is
like, this Mexican standoff thing? Like you can kind of hear all the clicking and.
Like I was looking at the front cover of this comic. Is that what that spread looks like? Because the front cover of this is ridiculous. Like the world's most ridiculous Mexican standoff, where everybody's got a gun pointed at everybody else and like ducking under and over each other's arms. It's brilliant.
No, it's not that. But it's like in the party, the point where you've got some of the assassins that have been invited to the party have actually been paid to kill the guy who's paying them to protect him. Or something like that, and they all start pulling weapons, and you get this little grid of them all just going like pulling guns, and then like the other half defend him. He's like, "I'll pay you double whatever the other guy's paying if you defend me," and he's like, "Double, okay." It's like, and yeah, I just love like that this book has fun, and it manages to build tension while being funny, and it does it so effortlessly as well. It's like great at what it does, and the way that it uses colour to indicate mood and focus in the panels to kind of help build that tension, and with the shadowing and shadows in the artwork and everything else, and at the same time, it's being this like the most hilarious thing ever. It's great. I love it. That just gives texture to the whole thing, and it's just fantastic. So yeah, that is A++ from Greg for that one, and that is Assassination. And I'm going to get you a list of credits. So, list of credits for Assassination. The creator and writer is Kyle Starks, and Erica Henderson is creator, artist, and has done the cover for it as well. Darren Bennett is letterer. John Moyson, editor. Andre Juarez is logo design, and Karina Taylor, production design. So I'm going to read out some assassin names, because we've got the first 20 here on the first page. So assassin rankings worldwide. We have number 1 is Fernando. Number 2 is Taipan. Number 3 is Niles Roosevelt Axelrod. Number 4 is Chad Fingerman. Number 5 is simply called Smoke. Number 6 is Wistful Stan. I love his introduction in the book as well. He's great. Number 7 is Desert Regal. Number 8 is a guy called Tanaka. Number 9 is Wintergreen. Number 10 is called Frankie Townhouse. Number 11 is the Red Scorpion. Number 12 is Meat Stick. Number 13 is Smushwalker. Or Smushwalker. Number 14 is Connie the Tank. You've got the Mamba Twins at number 15. Number 16 is David Bowie Knife. Number 17 is El Sicario. Number 18 is Rumble Deathpatch. Number 19 is Dave, and ranked 20 is Fuck Tarkington. His name is actually Fuck. Oh, and they do like this whole thing when they introduce him as well. I have to read this joke out because it's great. Like, did you say your name was Fuck? What the hell kind of a name is that? Well, my pappy wanted a boy named Sue situation, but was worried naming a boy after a girl might also arise some homosexual type situations. So he felt this was the rightful compromise. Or he felt this was rightful compromise. Did it work? Well, I'm tough as hell, but sexually ambiguous. So think about the word fuck.
God, what the fuck? Alright.
Tough as hell, like a really harsh swear word, but also sexually ambiguous. But yeah, no, I loved it. It's great. It is probably like, again, like one of my favourite comics. So this and Astro Hustle are like vying for top place right now. Astro Hustle kind of takes it a little bit, but both of them are fantastic. So there we go. That is Assassination. And that brings us on to you guys with Genlock.
Yeah.
Or Genlock. I'm not sure because I don't know what this is.
Genlock. So I'm not going to talk about this for too long as it is not a comic.
It's not?
It is not a comic. But it has a lot of influences in there which come from like anime, manga, and I'd say comics in general. But yeah, Genlock is sci-fi animation that is from the Rooster Teeth network, or basically production house, and you may know them, Red vs. Blue, Ruby, and a bunch of other things. And in that same tradition, this is in the same. So it's 3D animation, but with like 2D filters on top. And yeah, it's a mech show set during it's during a warring period in like a dystopian future. And we are with the Polity, who are like coalition of like different groups who are trying to hold off this like horrible, like weird nanomachine evil force called the Union. We basically follow a bunch of these like soldiers and recruits who are doing their thing. And at the beginning of the show, I'm not going to go into any like super details or anything, but at the beginning of the show, we start off with like those sort of cool like walking tank mechs. But then we like get up into like proper like Gundam-esque like mobile suit or like frame type like suits. And yeah, I mean, like my overall thing on this, I've just got a few points. I think it looks really cool. I think it does things with the war storyline and the character beats and theming more than I thought it would, so I was pleasantly surprised by that. I think that the action is really well shot. I mean, it hits on a lot of like well-worn tropes, especially like mech tropes of things of like younger people being sent off in having to fight a war in like big like humanized like mechanical monsters. But I think it knows its history. It's aware of that, and it does pay homage and feed those things in, but also offer a bit more of a postmodern look on those things while still giving you like fun, cool action sequences and like delving into sort of the psychology of what this like war scenario would have on these people. And yeah, I quite enjoyed it. I'm 6 episodes in. I believe Rahul's finished it. But I think one of my favorite things about this show is the characters. I think they have got a really good crew of representative, like diverse like characters, but all of them have like interesting backstories or stories in the show, and they've all got really they're like their personalities shine through when they're in their mech suits, which are called holons in this, and it's like a thing where they don't actually get into the robot. They sort of psychically control them to dumb it down. But yeah, it's quite fun. Michael B. Jordan's produced on the show, but he also voices Julian Chase, who's like the lead. You have Dakota Fanning there, Maisie Williams, David Tennant, and yeah, I think one of the issues I can have with this style of animation is that while I think like robotic action scene fights look cool, sometimes I feel the character models themselves can't emote, or they don't emote as much as you'd get with like traditional, say like 2D animation or something like that, or like anime or something. But I think those gaps are covered by the voice work, which I think is really good, and often will sort of take you over that. I think it connects the dots, so when there are any sort of shortcomings in that area, you don't really feel it as much because the voice acting's so good. But yeah, those are my general overview points on it. I may have more to say when I finish the show. How were you? What were your feelings, Rahul?
Yeah, echoing a lot of what you said, like the fact that it's somewhat well-worn anime, young children sent off to war in giant machines tropes, but it does just enough new stuff to keep it interesting and not be trite. Like I really like this whole mind transference thing that you touched on, and it does some really interesting things with what that what that means, and like how that changes your humanity, and those sort of questions it's asking, which is really interesting. I think the voice cast is what got me onto it to begin with. Like you mentioned, Michael B. Jordan, Dakota Fanning. Don't know if you mentioned David Tennant, who plays the Doctor, which I thought is kind of a cool like nod to his role as the Doctor in Doctor Who. Generally, I really enjoyed it. My girlfriend really likes it. Like you were saying, the animation sort of betrays a lot of the expressiveness that could come through visually, because I don't think it's that detailed in some ways, in both like the style on screen and also the fluidity of the animation, which can be quite rigid. But like when you get the fight sequences and stuff, it flows really nicely, and there's some really creative like framing and action in the animation, which is kind of cool. I think, and another thing that brought me onto it is that Evan Narcisse, who is a writer for Black Panther, is another favorite of mine on his podcasts and just on Twitter. I follow him. He's one of the writers for the show that sort of got me onto it. Yeah, I think it's really good. I don't want to say too much because you haven't finished it, but I think it's 8 episodes. They're fairly short each. They're like 20 minutes a pop. It does round off quite nicely. And something that's unrelated to the show, but related to like the method of getting it. I subscribed to the Rooster Teeth channel to watch this, and I've had real trouble like unsubscribing from it. So that's just some warning to our listeners, maybe like know that it's a bit of a headache to get unsubscribed from the Rooster Teeth platform.
Why would you want to unsubscribe? You've got years and years and years of Red vs. Blue and Ruby to watch.
I don't care at all about Red vs. Blue. Ruby, I actually wouldn't mind checking out, especially now that I feel like I'm tied into an additional month that I didn't want to be tied into. I might give that a look. But all of the personality podcast game, YouTube stuff, I'm not really that interested in, if I'm being honest. But it's worth the cost of admission just for this show. I think it's really good and worth your time. So, yeah.
Isn't Red vs. Blue on Netflix?
I think it is, yeah. Or at least in part, or like maybe some features are on Netflix. But yeah.
God, Red vs. Blue, I remember that from years ago.
Yeah, I had somebody lend me a DVD of it, and I didn't like it, so I'm not going to pay for it. But yeah.
Damn, that's a throwback. Yeah. So moving on.
Although, sorry, before we catch up, just speaking of Red vs. Blue, new Halo coming out on PC. Like nothing comics related. I just think I never having played Halo, I'm quite excited for that. So
is it just like every Halo game in a collection getting chucked up on PC, which I'm quite pleased with.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's about time.
It's the main trilogy and it's Reach, and I think maybe a couple of others as well. So yeah, it sounds cool.
Oh, that's going to be so lit. Friday Discord's playing Halo. So, giant robots.
Mm-hmm.
This is the last one on the list. This is Transformers #1, and this is a bold new era because this is like Transformers going back to #1. So IDW are publishing Transformers, and IDW have like reset the clock, as it were, and we're getting this whole new kind of fresh take on Transformers, and it is a new era indeed, and I'm excited. It's an introduction to something that is really, really familiar to me, but yet it feels so incredibly fresh. Such a unique thing. Like, to be able to do that is something that I think is kind of cool. Like, to make it feel fresh to me, someone who's been living in this on Cybertron for the past 25 years of his life or whatever, it's kind of cool. And so let's go ahead and give you the blurb, as is the thing. So, a new era dawns. In the infinite universe, there exists a planet like no other, Cybertron, home to the Transformers and a thriving hub for interstellar commerce. It is a world brimming with organic and constructed diversity. Immense structures line its landscape. Mechanical giants roam across its surface. I almost want to do this in the voice from the first episode of Transformers, when they're giving like the whole like introduction, or the voice from the movie. In fact, when they introduce the movie, it's like the year is 2005.
Go on, give it your best go.
A world brimming with organic and constructed diversity. Immense structures line its landscape. Mechanical giants roam across its surface. Starship-sized titans orbit its skies, keeping a constant protective watch above and below. Ancient transformers merge into its very fabric. Small, mysterious creatures skulk in its shadows. It is a truly amazing realm, long untouched by war, and exuberantly reaching for the stars. This is the Cybertron that Optimus Prime and Megatron vie for in this bold new origin, a world of seemingly endless peace. All that changes when Bumblebee and Windblade take a newly forged Cybertronian on his first voyage through this world of wonders. They are confronted by the hard reality of the first murder to have occurred on Cybertron in living memory. Ooh, yes.
I liked it. there were hints of Twilight Zone in that.
yeah.
I tried.
Next past or like
I
that.
tried. It's just like the year is 2005, like from the movie. You know, it's just there. It's just the hair metal just rattling away in the background. But anyway, yeah. So peacetime Cybertron. That's exactly what it is, and the writing is great. Like the pacing and the introduction to the world, it is really cool. Like the way they do it as well. You actually feel like you are experiencing everything for the first time as a freshly forged Cybertronian, like Rubble. So Rubble is the new Cybertronian that they are leading him to his place of work. They're going to teach him something about energon engineering, and it is Bumblebee's job to get him there. And as they're travelling across the Cybertronian landscape and everything else, it feels fresh. It feels like you are experiencing things through Rubble's eyes, like you are seeing everything for the first time. Like the way it's interesting to go back to the beginning and to see an entirely fresh take on the story, a time before Civil War on Cybertron. The way colour, it just works so well. And the way colour and lighting is used in this book in harmony with the sharp angular lines, forms of the characters and the landscapes and everything, it's fantastic. It's like this cold metallic landscape that's actually more than meets the eye, like everything else in this book. I mean, I particularly like the beginning of the book as well. I got some like 2001 Space Odyssey vibes with this new Cybertronian like emerging from a canyon and climbing out into the light onto this double-page spread view of a beautiful sunset with a gorgeous Cybertronian vista. It just kind of just felt like I just wanted the 2001 Space Odyssey music going in the background as that was happening. Like the... Like I could hear it. I could hear it as I was reading it. And it has some cool design elements on this first page in particular as well. The layout and panel styling looks like a PCB. It feels like we are being woken up or switched on for the first time, like a book opening that simultaneously says welcome and welcome back. And it's a true primer for what life is like in this peacetime version of Cybertron. It's a great story hook as well later on with the way they have the interactions between Orion Pax, Optimus and Megatron, which I won't spoil. And it's just a general overview of an interesting world teeming with life, and it's just great at what it does, especially in the styling and the colours, and the art is fantastic. Like these sharp angular designs, and the Transformers designs are spot on. I love how clean everything looks, how polished everything looks, because we are in a world constructed primarily of metal, and although there are organic life forms there, the main focus and the main life form on this planet is an inorganic one. It is the Transformers themselves, the Cybertronians. And it's just, it's just like a brilliant way to introduce a new world or a new take on a world. And I think it works exceptionally well. And it's a good hopping on point. I'd recommend it to anyone with an interest in Transformers, or anyone who, wanted a jumping on point, who wanted to get into the IDW Transformers stuff but had no way in, no way on the train. This is your way on. This is your ticket to ride, as it were. And I was impressed by it as a long-time Transformers fan. I loved it. So, also, there's like a little bit of a blurb at the beginning which I should read out. Like a little thing, kind of the main introduction, like the primer. It's like a black page, and it just says the story so far in white. And it says, before an endless war raged between the Autobots and the Decepticons, Before Orion Pax took on the mantle of Optimus Prime. Before Earth ever learned about the strange robotic alien beings from Cybertron, the Transformers, there was peace. There was society, and there was wonder. Join us now at the dawn of a bold new era. And this is written by Brian Ruckley. Art is by Angel Hernandez and Katchit Whitman. So Hernandez does pages 1 to 9 and 14 to 20. Katchit Whitman does pages 10 to 13. Colours by Joanna Lafuente and letters by Tom B. Long. And it is edited by David Marriott and Tom Waltz. And yeah, it's great. I'm on board. Fully on board with that new Transformers book. More on board with that than I was with IDW's other... Lost Light was the best Transformers book they had in a long time, and that was great. But out of the Hasbroverse stuff, we had this solo Optimus Prime book, and it wasn't that good. I didn't like it. And I didn't like what they were doing with the Transformers in the Hasbroverse stuff, so I'm liking the fact that they've rebooted it all. Because Lost Light came to an end, and it was a poignant end, it was a nice end, and now they've done this, and I'm on board with this. I like where this is going. So yeah, there we go. And I think that brings us to the end of the list. I think we're out of things to talk about, and we're now on to the pull list, aren't we? So, this is going to be the pull list for the 20th of March and the 27th of March. So 20th of March is when this episode will be available, 27th is the following week. Now, do you want to kick us off, Ray?
I can do, although I don't actually have anything for the 20th. I did want to bring up something that came out on the 13th, which was the magnificent Ms. Marvel, the new run of Ms. Marvel, having ended by G. Willow Wilson and now picked up by Saladin Ahmed. I've got it. I haven't actually got a chance to read it because I'm trying to catch up on all the other Ms. Marvel stuff I've missed out on, particularly the last volume, which I haven't read any of yet. And I've also started reading Marvel Champions, which is, the younger crowd, which is Miles, Nova, Ms. Marvel, etc. But yeah, that came out. And then I don't have anything for the 20th, but then for the 27th, I have The Avant-Gardes number 3 and Glow number 1, which is based on that Netflix show about wrestling that you said you liked. So I'd be keen to see what that's like.
Yeah, so for me, I've got quite a bit this time, actually. So for the 20th of March, the first one I wanted to bring up is a book called Invisible Kingdom, which... it's Berger Books, and it's set in a small solar system in a far-flung galaxy. Invisible Kingdom tells the tale of two women, one a younger religious acolyte and the other a hard-bitten freighter pilot, who separately uncover an unholy conspiracy between the leader of the Reunification, the system dominance religion, the Renunciation, sorry, I'm reading that wrong. The system's dominant religion, and Lux, the all-consuming mega-corporation that controls society. On the run from dangerous reprisals on both sides, this unlikely pair of rebels risks plunging the world into total anarchy if they reveal the truth. But when your beliefs betray you, what choice is left? Written by G. Willow Wilson, and artist is Christian Ward. So, there we go. That one I picked up purely for you, Ray, because it's got G. Willow Wilson on it.
Yeah, it's cool. I didn't know that she was doing this, but having just mentioned that she's ended the Ms. Marvel stuff, and I think she started on Wonder Woman as well. I need to catch up on her other work, so yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that one.
The next one on my list is Spider-Man Life Story number 1. So, in 1962, the world watched as teenager Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider, allowing him to become the Amazing Spider-Man. It's been 57 years since Amazing Fantasy 15, the story that brought everyone's favourite wall crawler into the Marvel Universe, and jump-started some of the most adventurous superhero stories ever. But what if Spider-Man had aged at the same rate as our world? When Flash Thompson is drafted to serve during the Vietnam War, Spidey must weigh the question of where his responsibility truly lies. So I believe this is a Spider-Man life story. I believe is going to be Spider-Man's life story, as if Spider-Man had been, active in the 60s and going up to today, basically. And kind of a unique take on Spider-Man there that I'm quite interested in and quite interested to read. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. I don't know about you two. How does that sound to you, Ray? Yeah?
Sounds interesting, yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Leon? Because I know you're a big Spider-Man stan. Spider stan.
I'll see what you guys say.
I kind of just got roped into this, but yeah.
Okay. On from there, we've got a Firefly comic, Firefly Bad Company #1, which I know very little about Firefly, but this is purely to appeal to you two again, because I know you two watch Firefly. So this is a 40-page celebration that takes a look into the never-before-seen story of one of the most beloved Firefly characters in the verse, Saffron.
Oh,
so it's a solo comic about Saffron, and it's a journey through the early days of Saffron's life, from before her fateful meeting and marriage to Mal. And it's an origin story no Firefly fan is sure to forget.
I didn't care about this at all, sorry, Rahul. I didn't care about this at all until you said Saffron, and now I might read it.
Yeah, there we go.
Safridge. Yeah.
What I'll do first is I'll tell you who's on this Spider-Man book. So Chip Zdarsky is a writer and cover artist. And Mark Bagley is the main artist. Then we've got like variants by people like Scotty Young, Greg Smallwood, Marcos Martin, and Tyler Kirkham. On the Firefly book, it is Josh Lee Gordon as writer, Diego Galino is the cover artist, Francesco Mortarino is the artist, and Jamal Campbell is the variant cover artist. And then the last one for the 20th is a book called Dismantlers, which was something that kind of sounded cool when I read the premise for it. Now this is on Black Mask. I should mention that the Firefly comic is Boom Studios. So Dismantlers is Black Mask, and in a galaxy where terraforming is the most common form of real estate development, a highly skilled team of dismantlers travels to failed sites and salvages what's left of them. But that's not the hardest part of their job, because relationships with each other can be even more complicated than terraforming entire planets. This is not a story of a prestigious federation or a powerful empire, but of the menial labourers who make it all possible. The unglamorous characters who work behind the scenes of galactic expansion. This is a story of their pillow talk, their break room banter, and their totally unforeseen fistfights with the pirates who jack their job sites out from under them. And this is from writer Ashley Woods, and Aria Bachi, and is the writer there, and yeah, it just looks kind of cool. Sounds kind of cool, premise. This whole kind of like sci-fi through the eyes of working class people instead of through the eyes of soldiers or mega corporations, which kind of caught my interest. Just like everyday average Joes in a sci-fi world kind of thing. Which sounds kind of cool. For the 27th, we've got the big one, which is something that I've been talking about on here for a couple of weeks. Mentioned it in previous episodes. This is Detective Comics 1000, which is out on the 27th, and I am really stoked about that. Really stoked to pick this up. There's some really nice variants for it. There's a couple that I've got my name down for at my LCS. There's some particularly nice ones. One of the ones is by Bruce Timm. It's the Bruce Timm one that I am particularly fond of. But yeah, there's a whole host of variant covers for this book. Each one is kind of like a different era of Batman comics, or a different era of Batman, and they all look rather nice. But yeah, I am down for this landmark issue, and yeah, we've got an all-star team on there as well of people that have worked on Batman over the years. There's so many people. I'm not going to read them all out. I'm going to leave this till I review it, but it just looks so great, and it's just celebration of everything that is Batman and everything that is, the reason I love superheroes. So yeah, Batman Detective Comics 1000. Ice Cream Man number 11 is out on the 27th, and that has a rather interesting premise as well. So I want to read the blurb for this, because this one So, Ice Cream Man 11, which is Hopscotch Melange Part 3. This is the true story of one guy picked to live in a house and have his life taped to find out what happens when life stops being polite and starts getting real. So it's kind of like trapped in reality TV, which is something that, you know, I mean, like, as being the person I am and being, you know, I don't like reality TV, and this is something that you know, it vibes with me, definitely. And you've recently caught up on Ice Cream Man, haven't you, Ray?
I have, yeah. It's so good. Like, I know I wasn't not listening to you. I just didn't have the time to do it, but I finally had the time and space to sit down and blast through 1 all the way through to 10 in one go. And damn, it's good. Like, it really, what's the TV tropes term? Like, it grows its beard. It goes from one thing into another. It goes from like the vignettes per issue to becoming like an overarching story. And I really like where it's gone. It's very cool. I'm looking forward to 11.
Yeah, no, it is great. I love what it's doing, and I'm really into it, like, in a big way. Next thing on my list, guess who is getting her own comic again? Sabrina the Teenage Witch. But this is the light-hearted Archie Comics Sabrina, not the Archie horror Sabrina. So this is a brand new series. This is Sabrina the Teenage Witch #1, and Sabrina is a teen witch who's struggling with balancing the double life of high school and her burgeoning powers. Newly relocated to Greendale with her aunts Hilda and Zelda, also witches, Sabrina is trying to make the best of being a new girl in town, which so far includes 2 intriguing love interests, an instant rivalry, a couple of misfits that could turn into BFFs, and trying to save the high school and maybe the world from crazy supernatural events. And this is written by Kelly Thompson. Veronica Fish is the artist, cover artist. Andy Fish, colorist. Jack Morelli is letterer. And we've got a host of variant covers. But it's like, this is the sort of like the pure Archie Comics Sabrina. So rather than being Archie horror, this is the Sabrina that will fit into the larger Archie Comics equation. The Sabrina that we may have seen, you know, if you've read any of the recent Archie Jughead comics, she pops up in there. It's that kind. I think it's got that kind of thing going on for it, which is kind of cool. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm so looking forward to that. This is another Archie thing for me to read as a Riverdale stan and Archie stan that I am. So yeah. On from there, we've got Glow, which Ray already mentioned, which is based on the show on Netflix. So yeah, it's published by IDW, and yeah, I like the show. I might like the comic as well. I'll pick it up and check it out. We also have something called Bad Luck Chuck on my list that I just spotted, which I just like, this just had like an interesting premise. So, Bad Luck Chuck. Cursed at birth, Charlene Chuck Manchester hires out her own bad luck, providing disaster where someone else can profit. She can get you that insurance payout fortune for a price, but bad luck doesn't always go as planned, and when Chuck gets stuck between a dissatisfied crime boss client, a cult leader, and a dogged insurance fraud investigator, things get explosive. So that just sounded interesting on premise alone. That's like something new. Like, okay, so she hires out her bad luck to people. That's cool. And then 30 Days of Night is making a return, which is something that I picked up on as well, being a fan of the 30 Days of Night movie and liking the comics. So 30 Days of Night, 100 page giant, which is on March 27th. So out of print for over a decade, the superstar creative team of Kelly Sue DeConnick of Bitch Planet and Steve Niles, Kick-Ass, and Justin Randall, Changing Ways, tackles the classic 30 Days vampires. Stella managed to bring her husband Eben back from the beyond, but he came back hungry. Direct market, yeah. So it's a 100-page issue, kind of like a an additional story for 30 Days of Night, which is kind of cool, because the 30 Days of Night movie was cool. It's one of my favourite horror movies. and I really like the comic as well. And that brings us to the end of the pull list, so I guess we should close out the episode. So that has been Ace Comicals number 58. You can find us at www.acecomicals.com, which is kind of the hub for everything. We are on Instagram under Ace Comicals. We are on Twitter at Ace Comicals. We are on Facebook under Ace Comicals. You can get in touch with us through DMs on Twitter. You can send us messages on Facebook. You can send us an email to acecomicals@gmail.com. You can find us to listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn and Castro. You can find me on Twitter at Batto, that's Battou. Ray, where can we find you?
Also on Twitter at Monkeh, Moonkeh.
And Leon, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter also at Leon Everett.
That has been Ace Comicals episode number 58. So that is Ace Comicals over and out.